ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Under Construction. No, this is the Zombie Train. This is Under Construction's footage, sped up 8 times, with 2 convenient breaks where I broke it. If you want more on that, go check the video. Under Construction. Episode 33 or something. Whatever. I broke it twice. That's all you need to know. So, today, we're going to be covering a thing that I entitled South America. It was in Zombie Train episode 209. Michael DeVillers said, "And what about South America?" This was 9 months ago. Holy cow. Just for a frame of reference as how far I am behind on all these questions, which is good because I have plenty of them. I don't ever want to run out of questions. So, my one-word response to you, Michael, was messy, and it's still incredibly accurate. Now, South America really doesn't have the population density that North America does, or Europe does. And this was reflected in sort of the way its outbreak happened. They had, emphasis on had, a lot of fairly powerful cartels and a few decently powerful governmental organizations there that did a pretty good job of sort of keeping things under wraps at the beginning before the Great Panic. But at the same time, they were also contributing, same with Central America, which I've talked about, contributing to the entrance of zombies into the United States. And, I mean, you can read more about this, before the Great Panic in World War Z, the book World War Z, which is by Max Brooks. He was a fellow survivor, and he did a fairly detailed sort of rendition of a lot of the things that happened. He also wrote the Zombie Survival Guide. But, I digress. The South America really, I mean, it's already rough. It was already a little bit rough, to begin with. But when the Great Panic happened, you really saw a lot of that fall apart. They lost pretty much all the commerce they ever had, just like the rest of the world. But at the same time, you didn't see sort of the rise of organized cartels so much because their customers had all gone away. They did not have the ability to ship things like either oil or drugs, either or, out to other places, and thus you saw this disassembly of society, as it were. And fact of the matter is that really contributed a lot to the situation there, almost more so than the zombies did. You did definitely see some problems because of the zombies. You saw this influx of them. They would generally not come in packs of many, like I talked about last episode, but you'd get just 1 or 2 or a handful that would wander, and they'd come out of the woodwork, and they would come in the middle of the night. That wasn't their intention, but that's when they were drawn to light a little bit more. They could see a little bit better, and that's also when they wouldn't be spotted as easily. South America did pretty well for itself in terms of self-defense methods, but fact of the matter was, it was never going to be enough, and there was a lack of organized groups. So you had very small, almost tribal situation going on with people that were families or groups of families that just in general banded together. But you saw this very slow conversion, especially in the flatter, more jungly parts of South America. This slow conversion to, well, basically everybody's infected now. Everybody's a zombie. I did not go to South America very much. I went down there a couple of times. One time was sort of, it was very late in World War Z, and it was almost like a pleasure trip. It was going down to look for the remnants of Uinta 50 and 51, which we found nothing. But we did find plenty of zombies and a few handy groups of people. A few very, very helpful groups of people. They were not... because people became so spread out, so there was a lot of bloodshed very early on, as far as I understand. Again, I'm getting all... This is all secondhand at the very least, because it's basically accounts from people I talked to. But like anywhere else, there was a lot of bloodshed at the very beginning. and government figures, a lot of corrupt politicians trying to escape to bunkers or hideaways or stuff like that, many of which just straight up disappeared. They did, at least as far as the people seem to be concerned, they believe they successfully escaped. At least most of them did. And then you see sort of the dissolution. You see the moving into the cartels, and the cartels doing a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of, trying different, almost various trades, various drug trades, and then moving to, like, sort of a more civilization-y style. Just basically trying a whole bunch of different business models, I suppose you could call them, to make money and to stay around. But you saw this slow dissolution of them as they moved further north towards places that had maintained at least some semblance of population density, and also you could travel around a little bit more easily. South America is not particularly well known for your ability to traverse the continent, but North America is in a lot more cases, I suppose. A lot of people were lost to disease as well, like regular disease, in areas that weren't so heavily infected with zombies. And that left either, these small clumps of zombies in what was essentially the jungle, and the groups that we ran across were generally groups that had not seen another human being in months, to give a ballpark. At least weeks, if not months, or in a couple of very isolated cases, because we got around years. Perhaps since very early on in World War Z. Now, we had the privilege of using the Enterprise, the Zeppelin that we had, or have, I guess, but the one that we were gifted by the U.S. Navy. And then, that sort of got the call out. We may have accidentally incited something our first time there, whether it be good or bad, but there were definitely remnants of sort of an attempt at civilization the second time that I came around, which, if I could remember where that was, it was on sort of the western coast of South America. Oops. Well, the Guatemala, hold on one second. Also, I'm dumb. Guatemala is in Central America. So that was not the time I was thinking of, but there were times that we went to South America. Sorry, I had to get out the map for that. We went pretty deep into Bolivia. That's where I went. And that was a fairly eye-opening experience because this place was very isolated. You had to cross the mountain range to get to it. And as well, there were a lot of the settlement that began to develop after we passed through was around Lake Titicaca because of the source of water, because of the open area, and because we had sort of instigated this idea that, yeah, you can really try for something that's a little bit more far-flung. And it did seem like they had tried for something that was more of a build-up of people around there, and or at least evidence of such thing. But that was the only such settlement that I knew about. Certainly the only one that I found throughout the whole of South America, but then again, I didn't go too far in South America. And naturally, the communication across the continent was next to none. Along the Gulf Coast, there was a little bit more stuff going on. Along the Caribbean Sea, I guess, actually, not the Gulf of Mexico. But there was a little bit going on there because there was a lot of trade that went on in that area. a lot of piracy started to come around. It's interesting. It was the political situation where there were politics was always very interesting, very touchy. Not really the kind of thing that you could look at from the outside and understand what was going on, and even most of the people on the inside didn't appear to know what was going on, because I did try to talk to as many people as I could while I was there. I'm not talking about Bolivia this time. I'm talking about up in Venezuela, in that area, because we during a storm we had to moor along basically the closest place we could find, which was just south of the port of Spain. In that little strait there, and that somebody stumbled upon us, these people with boats. They stumbled upon us because we were sort of sticking out while we were trying to get ourselves sorted out after the storm was over, in Trinidad and Tobago, that sort of area. And they told us sort of to go along the coast and talk to people, and we did, but that didn't really give us anything lucrative because most of the people there were really just trying to fend for themselves, and they didn't have really any ability to go anywhere. They didn't have any ability to make anything more than just the bare minimum to survive, and most of them knew more people that had failed in doing so than people that were succeeding in doing so, which was really sort of a disturbing experience. While some places in the world they had a very difficult time with regards to the zombies, South America just had a lot of difficult times with regards to its climate, with regards to its natural situation, I suppose. And again, the sort of group escape of many government leaders did not help that at all. There weren't really a lot of people that wanted to sit around and organize some sort of relief effort. And unfortunately, I was one of the ones that, I stopped in and I said hello, but I had a lot of other things that I had to take care of. I had other responsibilities, unfortunately. I would have loved to start working on that, but there really wasn't a lot for us to gain there. It would have been great in a humanitarian sense, but while there were a lot of these families that happened to be scattered around, they were extremely scattered, and they were usually very small in number. My efforts, unfortunately, were better focused. Unfortunately for them, I suppose, were better focused on other locations that were more population dense. And like I said, it's the lack of population density that really hurt South America, which is ironic because it goes both ways. There are definitely cases where, almost every case where there was a major death, it was a place with population density, but most of the places in South America sort of died off over time. And as we flew over, when we went to Bolivia, there were more dead cities than live ones. Even dead, just like devoid of zombies, devoid of humans, with animals in short supply. Because it's extremely inhospitable. It wasn't the place where you were going to sit down and set up civilization. There are reasons more than political why it's not as booming as it could be, or it wasn't as booming as it could be in the days before the war. So, it's fairly unfortunate, but that's just the way it was. There was basically nothing for us to gain from there. Not even the oil, because that sort of stuff could have been closer, but they didn't have the industrial capacity. That it simply did not exist. They were never touched in that sense in their cities. Even their big ones were relatively small. So that was South America. It was dead. It was just unfortunate, dead. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know this was a downer, but you can ask more specific questions if you like, and if not, I will see you next week. Trainman out.